My name is Suzanne, and I am with the Computer Workshop. We're going to be presenting a Teams webinar to you today, and I'm very excited to have all of you with us. Just wanted to give you a little bit of information up front as we go along. We have 84 people, could have a few more join us as we go, so we're going to remain muted. And if we have questions, we may chat some of those questions from time to time. At any time during the webinar, if you're having any kind of difficulty or you have questions, the training manager, David Williams, is hanging out in the chat area, and he will be willing and able and happy to answer your questions and keep everybody, up and running. So right now we are going to, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm one of the trainers, one of the instructors at the Computer Workshop. It's very possible that I have had many of you in class before. So if you've had me in class and you recognize me, hi, glad to have you with us again today. As the producer of this webinar, we have David Williams, who is the training manager at the Computer Workshop. And for those of you that are not quite as familiar with who the Computer Workshop is, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on us. We are a training and professional development company in Dublin, Ohio. That's where our headquarters is. We have been delivering training and doing consulting since 1988. So we're the oldest training center in this area. We have 10 classrooms in Dublin, which under different circumstances, we will hold classes in our classrooms again. But for the time being, we felt like this was definitely helpful information that we wanted to convey to you, our customers, to help you be ready and able to work from home for however long we have to do that. So I am going to share my Teams screen, and we're going to start talking about Teams. So I'm going to just click the share button and share my Teams screen. Not that. I want this. That's what I want. Okay, so you should see my Teams screen on your screen. It may be slightly smaller or maybe inside your Teams window. But I want to just point out the Teams environment. And so we're going to start in the upper left-hand corner. As I go, you can see my cursor kind of changes from a hand to an arrow, but I'm over here in the upper left-hand corner of my window, and this is called the action bar, where you see these two little arrows. And then I see a bell for activity, I see chat, I see Teams, calendar, calls, and files. Okay, the main center of my screen right now looks like a meeting. But as soon as I click one of the items on this action bar, you're going to see that that's going to change. So I'll start with Teams. So Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Teams is an application, but Teams themselves are segments where we can actually communicate with multiple team members. So you can see here I have now that I've selected Teams on my actions bar, I have a list section. And this actually does show all of my teams. I've got several others, but I didn't feel like I wanted to muddy the waters right now. So we're just looking at the instructor team for the time being. And you can see the instructor team has a little arrow beside it, and you can expand and collapse your teams in the list area. And you'll also notice that we have several different items inside of that are called channels. Okay, so when we create a team in a few minutes, you will notice that, sorry, I'm trying to get back to my participants to mute somebody. There we go. Okay, so you'll notice that when we create a team in a few minutes, that general always exists, but we can add other channels. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. But when I change what I have selected here in my action bar, you'll notice that that list changes. This is always going to show me a list of things. If I choose my calendar, it looks a little bit different with calendar. It doesn't have 3 sections. It just shows the calendar. But activity does a lot of the same things. So you have a list and then you have some other things. All right. So in addition to that, you're gonna notice that in this main section, this is my content section where you can see right now there's some conversation and a little picture from something that somebody posted just being silly yesterday. This post is like a running conversation. So there are some tabs right up here at the top: posts, files, meeting notes, and then virtual class setup. The two that are with every team that you'll see when we create our new team in a few moments, those are posts and files. Those are always there. But this plus sign lets me actually create additional tabs so I can add different things. So posts is showing the conversation. Files actually shows me a list of files, a group of files that team might be collaborating on or might need. Meeting notes is actually a notebook. It's a OneNote notebook that I added, and that's one of the things that I can get from the plus sign. And then virtual class setup is actually a planner that we've added. So we'll take a look at some of those just briefly, how to add a tab and things like that. So I'm going to go back over to posts, and then I want to point up here to the upper right hand corner of my screen. You'll notice that it tells me I'm at the Computer Workshop Inc. If you are a member of multiple teams through multiple organizations, maybe you've joined a team as a guest somewhere else, this drop-down list actually has the option of I'm a guest with the state of Ohio from something that I did a long time ago. Now, none of the teams are active, but I just like to have that as an example, so I left it up there. I didn't remove that guest application. So the picture that you see here is my picture. Probably needs to be updated, but under the picture, I can change the picture if I want to. That is something that my organization allows. It could be that your organization will not allow you to change your picture and that maybe just your company picture is there. That's up to the team's administrator as to whether they'll let you do that. So because I'm the organizer of this meeting, you can see that my status is set to presenting, but I could actually change it to a different status if I wanted to. I don't want to while I'm in a meeting, but you can make custom status. So I can set a status message and make it more specific to what I'm doing if I'm working on a project. And there are also some other things here that we might want to look at, like settings. This is where you'll find all of your team's settings. And so they have, again, this is the typical Microsoft structure. So I've got a list of categories over here on the left, and then I have some different settings that you can choose from. Now, I don't want to spend all of my time going over settings, but just a couple things to point you in the right direction. If you'd rather have a dark or a high contrast background for teams, that might work better for some of you. Some people don't like all the brightness coming from their screen. So this is where you can change that. There are 3 options for you to choose from. Under notifications, this is how Teams is going to get a hold of you. So we're going to talk about some things like personal mentions and channel mentions and team mentions. And each one of these drop downs lets you customize each one of those types of messages, notifications, as to how you want to receive them. So each person can go in and set their own status. Okay, so I'm going to close out of settings. That kind of gives us a pretty good idea of what the general Teams environment looks like. Okay, just a quick overview. A couple of other things. I have some buttons here that tell me things like this view is a team view. And that usually means that it's not my entire organization. So when we create a team, you'll see that there is an option where I can choose to make it organization wide, and then you don't have to add everybody in your organization. It will automatically add them for you. However, Some of you may not have that choice. Your IT department may have made it so that you can't make organization-wide teams. It could also be that your organization is too large to make an organization-wide team because you can have a maximum number of 250 members in a team. And while we're on that subject of maximum numbers, you can only have 100 people in a meeting that have chat. So if we end up with more than 100 today, I haven't looked at how many people we actually have in our participant list, but if we have more than 100, then anyone who joins after 100 will only be able to communicate vocally if you have a microphone. Chat will not be available to you. So that's just a limitation of the Teams environment when you have really big meetings. Okay, so the way to do that is not what everyone wants to do, but get to the meeting early. That's how you ensure that you get to have chat. So there are also ellipses like this, the 3 dots. Those usually mean there are more actions available. So I can go in and get my channel notifications here. I can pin things. I can manage my channel, get email addresses and things like that from those extra dots. All right, down here at the bottom of my list, this is where I can actually create a team. So if you have permission to create a team or to join a team, you can click in this area and it will change the content section to this screen. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and create a team so that we can see what that looks like. And when I click the button to create a team, you'll notice that we have the option to build a team from scratch or create from an existing group or team. If any of you use SharePoint, you may have seen in the lower left-hand corner when you're on a SharePoint site that's a team site that you can join it to a team or you can create a team to go with it. And so that's kind of what this option is talking about. So we'll just build a team from scratch. And then here is where I get to choose options: private, public, or org-wide. So private means I get to send invitations to people or they don't get to join. Public means that anybody can join and any of my members can allow people to join. And then org-wide means that everyone in your organization is automatically joined. Okay, so I'm going to make this a private team so I can show you some other things. And we're going to call this AM webinar. Okay, and then I'm going to click create. So it takes a few seconds for it to create the team. You'll see it show up over here in my list. And then I don't have any other members except myself. So I'm going to add David so that we can work together. And so I just type his name or start typing his name and add him. Now, again, I can start typing a name or a group. So if you have distribution groups or other groups that have already been created within your environment, you can use those groups as well. So for now, I'll just add David. I'm going to go ahead and close this. And you'll see that now I have the AM webinar and there's the general channel has already been created. Okay, so now we've created our team and we want to talk a little bit more about the different pieces and parts that make up a team. What are some of those things that we can do? Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is the posts tab that you see. This is where communication takes place with the whole team. And I like this type of communication better than emailing back and forth, because when you have an email conversation, if one person forgets to reply all and somebody gets left out of the loop, then that can create some confusion or misunderstanding. In a team, when I start a conversation, everyone in the team gets this communication, so they'll all see my misspelling. Okay, so everyone that was in the team, which right now is just David and I, gets that communication. But if this was to 20 different people, they would all receive that communication. Okay, now anytime there's any activity, you can, or anytime you receive a message in Teams, you can actually click the reply option to reply to that message. So I'll bet David will try to do that here in just a moment so we can see what that looks like. Thank you. So this kind of makes this message group together, kind of like in Outlook when you group your messages by conversation. Chat is, the posts are going to do that. So this is my team communication. If I have something else that I need to communicate that's a different topic, then I would go back down here to start a new conversation. Now, David has also replied to this message and it says, looking forward to collaborating with everyone. So I can reply to that by clicking the reply option if I want to, but another way that I can just acknowledge that I got his message is I can use these emojis that show up next to each little message. Okay, so if I just give him a quick thumbs up, he knows I've read that message, and it lets me indicate. Now, if other team members did the same thing, then we might see more than just a 1 there. We might see 5 or 6 thumbs ups so that we know people are reading that information. Okay, they're communicating that. So so that is working with conversations. Now, along with the conversation, you'll notice if I click down here at the bottom and I want to start a conversation, but I want to specifically mention someone, I'm going to use the @ sign, and I'll use David since he's my other team member. Okay, so when I do that, oh, that didn't work as well as I wanted it to. I used the @ symbol, and you notice that it colors David's name. Now, David's going to do the same thing so that you can see what happens on my side when someone mentions me in a conversation. I think he is. There we go. Let me move this window out of the way. So again, it highlights your name, but as the person who is mentioned, when you're not looking at Teams, or maybe you are, you'll notice a couple of things. This message has an @ sign on the right-hand side, so it's easy for the user that was mentioned to pick those out. So we didn't see that when I sent the message to David. I can tell that I mentioned him because his name changes color, but it doesn't normally do that unless you've been mentioned. Okay, but when you get mentioned, you notice the @ symbol shows up. And also, now I accidentally read the message. So let me see if I mark this as unread. It doesn't put my activity back up here. I wanted to get up here and point to this. There's for a few seconds until I read that message, there's an @ symbol next to the Teams. You'll also see that I have chat because probably chat is taking place everywhere. Thank you. So let's see if it does it again. I don't think it's going to. And I also had a number beside activity. So if you are not...
Hey, Suzanne.
Yeah.
Hey, we're unable to see your bar due to the like the navigation bar. So can you scroll down your screen maybe a little bit so that we can see like your reply section of where you're typing?
I sure will do my best to try. Here, let me move this over here. Oh, it doesn't want to let me scroll. Moo. Did it just stop sharing?
Indeed.
Well, that's no good.
I don't know
Let's
if it
try
stopped
that again.
sharing. It stopped sharing.
Okay. Well, let me...
I think you were previously sharing. We just left the team.
Gotcha. All right, so let's try this again. Teams, general. And then I want to scroll down. I can see that my scroll bar will go further down.
And
But
actually, those that are participating on the call, if you click your, yeah, that'll work too. You may, you'll notice that as your mouse moves around the screen, your option bar at the bottom with all your icons appears. If you either stop moving for a little bit, or if you click on the Teams window and then don't touch your mouse, that little nav bar will disappear. And then it will automatically reappear as soon as you begin moving your mouse. So if you click, let things settle for a second, you should be able to see the start a new conversation section that Suzanne was working with there at the bottom of her window. And maybe now that she's reduced the size and so on, it'll fit up there even above your nav bar.
is that working a little bit better, or did I just manage to make the window large enough to put it right behind it? I can do this
No, it
and
looks,
then scroll down.
yeah, you're good there.
Okay. All right, so this is where I was typing my conversation. And so I wanted you to see that when these mentions happen, that like my action bar kind of lights up. So it's going to warn you or notify you when something happens. You might notice too that I'm not getting notifications like the ones that float over your desktop, but that's because I'm in the meeting. I'm the organizer. So you can set your controls so that you are do not disturb. So my status right here, you can see at the very top, my status says that it's set to do not disturb, and I'll only get notifications for urgent messages or from priority, but I can go into change settings to get there. Okay, now if you don't see that bar, but you want to set your status to do not disturb, that's where you would go back over here to your login and go back into the settings, and that will be one of the settings that's under there. Okay, so, all right, let's see if I just keep the window a little bit smaller. I don't want it to land right where your bar is, but I want people to have as much screen space as possible. So I'll do wide, not totally tall. Okay, so the next part of the team that we want to talk about is files. If I click on the Files tab, you'll notice that currently you don't see any files here. And that's because when I created the team, I just uploaded it, or I just created the team, so nothing has been uploaded yet. All right, so if I click the upload option, I can actually grab a file, and let's do this. So I just selected a file that's on my computer, and now it has been uploaded to Teams. All right, so David just mentioned to me that he had to take a call. Okay, so he had to hop out for a second. I think maybe he's back. We'll see. So we want to talk about collaborating. So one of the things that Teams allows you to do is to collaborate on documents, to work on things together. So there is a scenario in many work environments where you have to work on the document and then you save a version of it. You put that version up on a drive and somebody else pulls it off the drive and makes changes to it, and then they put their version up there. Or maybe one person starts an email that emails that out to several people and everybody creates their own version. And then somebody has to go back through and combine all of that together. Teams allows us to approach this a little bit differently. We can actually collaborate on the document simultaneously, and so we don't interfere with each other's changes. So I'm going to take a look at this document. Now, if I just click directly on the link, this is where everybody wants to click. And when I do that, it's going to open in Teams. It's not going to open in Microsoft Word. Okay, so at this point, I could start a conversation about this, and that conversation is going to give me a chat about this document. So we could chat back and forth about a document if we wanted to and have communication. You know, I think we should remove the border, or I think we should add I don't actually have to be talking to someone in a meeting. I can just comment, or maybe you have one or two people that are facilitating the collaboration and some people are just feeding back by chatting. All right, so we can talk about what we want our document to look like. And we got to get rid of the blank page, right? So we can make adjustments. But you'll notice that I can't really make any of those changes right here. Okay, so we're just looking at it at this point. So I'm going to click the close button. There are two other ways that we can open that document. The first of which is this one. If I click the ellipse next to the document name, then I get the option to open it, and I can open it in Word Online or in Microsoft Word. So I'm going to open this in Word Online. And it came up on another screen. David, are you back? Oh.
Yep.
Okay. So David is going to jump into this file with me. You can, he already did. Look at that. So you can see here in the upper right-hand corner that David Williams is here. You can see where he is. I can see which paragraph he's in. So David can change the title while I'm down here modifying the table and selecting the table and adding borders, since that's what I think needs to happen. Okay, so I'm going to go do that, and David is going to change something else, and you are going to be pleasantly surprised at how we can both do what we need to do. I need borders, borders, borders. Here, I'll just apply a style. You'll be able to see it. Okay, so there we go. So now I've done that, and David has changed the header to green. I can also look at the document. Oh, and there's a page break that has been removed, I think. So we don't have a blank page anymore. So we can modify this, and all of us are in the web app in Word. Now, if there's something that I wanted to do that wasn't available in the web app, then there is the option here to open this in the desktop app. We'll see if this actually lets me do it, because it freaked out on me yesterday. Yep, no, it did. Here it is. So it's in the web app, and I can still see that David is here, but David, that doesn't necessarily mean that he is not still in the web app. He could be in the web app or he could be in the desktop app. We don't really know. And it's not really, it doesn't really matter, because either way, we can both make changes to this document. Okay, I can still see where his cursor is at all times. So the trick is, don't modify the same thing that he's modifying, right? I can see it real time. I'll be able to see stuff pop up because somebody else is making changes. Okay, so he's going to change that header. So this allows for you to work together on the same document instead of creating 6 versions and then having to compile those back together. All right, so this is something that document collaboration that can be really helpful. Now, the one thing I didn't do before we turned this file on and started messing with it is I did not turn on track changes. So if you are concerned that someone might do something that we don't want, then, and you can do this either in the web app or in the desktop app, you would want to go over here and choose track changes to turn that on. Okay, so you can see it saves it automatically when I do that. But now if I delete something, you're going to notice those changes take place. Okay, and we can customize what you would see. I don't want to get too bogged down in track changes because that's Word, but you can see and you can change exactly how much control we have over that document. So you can show no markup if you wanted to. So we don't actually see it, but we know it's happening in the background. All right, now I'm going to close out of the desktop app and go back to the document, and I will always see this box that says resume editing here if I opened it initially in the web app. Now here I see the track changes, and it's automatically going to tell me that track changes is turned on. Okay, so I usually like to do that as the first thing. So I might even turn on track changes before I add the document to the environment, or go open it immediately and make an adjustment to it. Okay, so that is working with documents and collaboration using the files portion. Now, to get back to my screen, if I want to stay in the web, I can actually click on General up here. And it will take me back to where I can see the document, but I'm actually not in Teams anymore. I'm in SharePoint. So I know I just said the S word. That's okay. I will close that browser. And the only reason that that happened is because when I opened the file and went first to the app, the browser app, it has to open it in a browser. So when it goes back, it actually goes to the SharePoint window rather than the Teams window, because this is my desktop Teams. Okay, so you'll notice now we were talking about the tabs across the top. You'll notice that we've talked about posts and files. Wiki is another tab that's there, and Wiki is a place where you can post links to web pages, or you can add a web page if you want to. I don't have a need for this right now, and so what I actually want to do is just remove that tab. So I right-clicked on Wiki, click remove, and then remove again, and it's going to disappear. Okay. Now, if I want it back, it's not gone forever. I can always go to the plus sign and add Wiki. But maybe I do feel like our team needs a notebook so that we can take notes and track changes, you know, with our projects. So when I click that plus sign that you saw there, I now can choose from a bunch of different Microsoft products. Okay, so you can see all of the Microsoft products, or I could choose from a huge selection of third-party items. Okay, now these are not Office 365, but a lot of them are built specifically to combine with Office 365 and to work with Teams. Okay, so I'm going to choose Notebook, because who doesn't need to take notes, right? And now it's in a place where one person can take notes. I'll create a new note. Oh, actually, I already have a webinar notebook. So I'm going to grab that one and save it. All right, so then I would have to click to edit my notebook. All right, so now I've added an additional tab, and you can have others that you might add. Okay, so that is working with the content section of your team. And we created a new team. Let's create another channel. So why might I create an additional channel? Well, channels can have specific information, specific files, specific project contents that are stored in them that might not just belong to the general public of the team. Okay, so the instructors in our team, when I look up here, the instructors have general information, and we looked at those files. We saw that there were, a bunch of different types of files. So whenever all of the instructors need it, we would put it under general. But there was a project that we worked on a while back that was the contractor guide. And the contractor guide only has 3 files. It has a notebook to keep notes about what this project looks like, and then it has a version of the contractor guide for our Dublin office and one for our Cleveland office. So we just focused on the file and getting it edited as a team, but not necessarily every instructor had to put their eyes on it. One instructor did the majority of the editing, and then the other instructors looked it over and made suggestions and some adjustments to it. Okay. Now that was extremely helpful. This was something that it finally worked out, but in the beginning, one of our instructors was having some difficulty getting Teams to really play nice for him. And what we discovered is that he didn't have Office 365 on his system. He had 2016, and so it was behaving differently when he edited that file. So if you find that there's some weird stuff going on, check the versioning, make sure that that's not what's causing it, as a lot of times larger organizations roll things out two groups of people. It could be that one person wasn't on the same part of the rollout that you and the rest of your team were. Okay, so again, these files, even though they're subject to just this contractor guide, these files are open the same way. So I can open them either by clicking on them, or I can open them by choosing the ellipse. If I click on the name, it's going to open it in Teams, which gives me fewer editing options than if I open it in the Word or in its native file. Okay, so let's go back over here to our AM webinar, and let's look at how we would actually add a new channel if we had a project that we wanted to work on. So you're going to go to the ellipse next to the AM webinar, and there's an option there to add a channel. There is another spot to add a channel, but it's actually up here at the top of our first conversation. There's a button here that says create more channels. So once you have conversation that starts rolling, it's not really very productive to scroll up and make that change. Normally you want to just come over here and click add channel. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to call this, we'll just call this webinar project. Helps me to keep track of things. So now when I create this team, it is possible for you to make it a standard team or a private team. A standard team means that anyone that's already on your team can access it and can click on it. A private team means that anyone that's part of your team can be invited to it, but it doesn't necessarily, it's not going to behave the same. Okay, so we can create private teams. And again, let's see here. See if I can add. Oh, I can't add him because he's not part of my team. Okay, well, I guess I'll have to add David. Sorry, David. Giving you a lot of work. Again, it takes a few seconds to add David to that. And then I'll get my done button. There we go. So you can see that David came in as a member. I'm going to click done. And this private team has a little lock symbol next to it. Now, we've had a couple of other webinars earlier this week, and one of the people after the first webinar mentioned that they are not able to make private channels and private teams. Sorry, I didn't mean to click on that. They're not able to make private channels and private teams. That is something that your IT department can customize so that you don't have the ability to create a private channel for whatever reason. Now, they might be able to ask your IT department to create a private team or to limit who has access to a team. Okay, so that is a possibility, but it just depends. When you create a team, you own the team. And even someone who has pretty hefty permissions within your network can't necessarily delete that team from the Teams app. Okay, so you are the one who gets to control that and manage it. Now, on my general tab, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to the webinar for just a moment. So it is possible for me or someone else to add members to the team. It is possible for you to leave a team. So maybe you were added to a team and you're no longer on that project and you don't want to get notifications from them. You can go and leave the team. Okay, very few people have the option to edit the team. You may find that your permissions are different than mine, but this lets me go back and change whether it's private or public. This also lets me give a description. Okay. If we have that option, or perhaps change the name of it. Okay. Another thing that I wanted to look at is if I manage the team. So So when we look up here, because I'm the owner of the team, I can see a list of members and I can see pending requests if someone asks to join the team. Okay, David, did you leave the team? It says
I did.
there are no members. Okay, so then ask to join the team again.
I'm trying to find the team. Bear with me.
Okay. So so there can be pending requests. We can see the different channels, so I can add channels from here. As the team manager, I could make channels for different projects and whatnot. I also have settings, so I can do things like turn off the fun stuff, right? Someone mentioned yesterday that they're in a public educator, and they said, you know, they liked the collaborative stuff, but the emojis and the GIFs and the stickers, they know that their kids would not be able to manage that without getting themselves distracted and in trouble. So it is possible to turn that off per team. So as the owner, you have the right to do that. There's also some just information, what's happening on your team, how many messages, how many apps, what kind of things are going on. And this is tracking over the last few days. So Microsoft is just trying to give you a lot of information about mentioning stuff. Did I make it a private team, David?
No, but I need a code. To join a team, you have to have a code.
Oh, okay.
So you want to go up to your team settings, manage team.
Oh, right. That's where I have to give you that's where I am.
There was a code. So under your settings.
Oh.
Team code.
Team code. There we go. Generate a code for you. See how you are.
I'm supposed to be able to. Can you chat that, please? Because I cannot.
Yep.
Remember that. Thank you.
Oh, come on. Sure thing. So let me get back to my Teams window here and chat. Hello, chat. And send that. So actually, if anybody else wants to join the team, it's going to go away after the webinar. So, but you could try. Some of you may be able to, and some of you may not. Which brings me to inviting guests to your teams. So can you invite external people outside your company to your team? And again, the answer is maybe. You might be able to if your organization has allowed that, but if they have turned that feature off, then you will not see that. Okay, so I should get a request. Now, that actually might just let you join. Yes, you can tell that he has been able to join again. So the other option, if you can see a team, if it's a public team, then you can just click it when you're here. Okay, so like if I clicked this one and just clicked join team, then I would have to, it allowed me to join it. Okay, and so then if I'm like, oops, I was the wrong team, I can leave that team. So the Cognos class is probably going, what is going on? Okay. Yes, David loves his GIFs. All right. So we talked about teams and channels. We've talked about our content section. We've talked about conversations with the entire team. Let's talk a little bit about talking to just one individual or a smaller group of individuals. Maybe you need some communication with one or two people, but you don't want to communicate to the entire team. It's not necessary. It's just extraneous conversation. So I can come up here to my chat and I can click on the person that I want to chat with. Now you can see that I'm in the webinar here. So that's bold. And so and there may be chat that's in the webinar that I haven't read yet. So that's the nice thing. Whenever you have chat or activities or mentions, you're going to notice that those things get little icons next to them. And it's just like Outlook. When you open your inbox, you see the bolded items and you know that those are the unread ones. And the same thing is true here. I can look at this. I can actually pull up the webinar chat and scroll back through some of the things that you all have said. Okay, and I see a question that I'd like to address because I think that's a really great question. And I don't know if, yeah, so yes, Teams is an interface that allows you to use your SharePoint environment, but a lot of people are afraid of this word. And so Teams does give you the option of storing your documentation in SharePoint. And as David said, that is kind of a sticky wicket when we get too far into it. But when you're looking at a team, I'll jump back here for just a second, and we're looking at files. You'll notice there is an option to open it in SharePoint. So it does tie into the back end, but you can do everything that you need to do through the Teams interface. And so really the only thing that SharePoint is doing there is supporting the files. There may be a few other things that we're allowing, but just supporting the collaboration of files and the storage of files within your organization.
So while you're here, we
Sure.
had another question. And Timothy, if you notice on the menu bar, this is where you would find the new button for creating one of those nasty F words that you may need to create within the document library. So if Suzanne clicks on new, you'll
Yep.
see the command there to create a new folder, which you could use for categorizing or setting up your document storage and such.
Right.
So you do have that capability here.
We strongly encourage you. This is a SharePoint disclaimer. We strongly encourage you not to use folder navigation heavily like we do in a network, because that often has bad results in SharePoint. You will see, if I just take one step further and go back to that SharePoint site, since you've already seen it anyway, you'll notice that it does create a general folder inside of the documents folder, which is on my SharePoint site. So if I have multiple teams that are using this, or multiple channels that are using this same site, you'll see additional files show up here for each channel. Okay, this is the message that I was referring to that you see in the lower left-hand corner, that you can actually create a team. We already have a team, so we don't need to do that. But you can do a team and then it'll stand up a SharePoint site, or you can build a SharePoint site and then make a team off of it. Okay, all right, that's all I'm going to say about that. So back over here in Teams. The reason that I discourage the use of folders is because you can break, so it's not all I'm going to say about it. It's because you can break that URL if it gets too long. Remember, you've only got 255 characters, and that does include all of your nested folders. So you just want to watch that. So back over here in chat, if I want to have a conversation with one person or a couple of people, I can click on the person. If there's someone who I've recently chatted with, I'll see them in the recent section, or I can actually click next to their name. So here's one of the other instructors, Jeffrey. And I can actually pin Jeffrey to the top. If I have a lot of conversations with him and I know that I want to be able to get back to that conversation quickly, you can pin them to the top. And then if you no longer need that person's conversation, then you can click here and unpin. Don't tell Terry I did that. So, all right. So you can have conversations that are just focused on one or two people. To start one of those conversations, at the top of my list area, I'm going to click this, this button to create new chat. Okay, and so Jeffrey's name showed up because I had him selected, but let's say I want to have a chat with, okay, so Brian. We love our GIFs, people. I'm sorry. So we were having some communication about previous classes and some things that were emailed, some communication about the planner, things on the team. And so that's how I can get back to it. So if you've already had a conversation with that person in Teams, then it brings you back to the same conversation. Let's see if I can find someone that I've never had a conversation with in Teams. Yeah, there's one. Okay, so this is someone who sits right next to me most of the time, and so I don't have to have a lot of Teams conversations with her because I can just shout over the cubicle wall, which is terribly unprofessional. But this is what it would look like. And so now our communication is going to go back and forth. If I needed to add another person, then I can select another person to add to that conversation. And if you had a group of people, then you would be able to name the group as well instead of just listing individuals. Okay, so that's how I can start conversation and then chat with them. All right, so we can do in our team, we can have posts, and in the chat section, I can create individual chats. Now, another thing that I might want to do, and I'm just going to cancel out of this. I don't want to bother them while they're working, but let's say I'm looking for information that's in a chat that I've had recently. I'm going to click that little funnel and I can type in a word that I know was in the conversation to try and get back to the one that I'm looking for. So you can search that chat. Okay. Now I've got about 8 minutes left, and so I want to talk real briefly about creating items on my calendar. So meetings, that you might do a lot of meetings right now in Teams. And the easiest way to create a meeting is to just click the calendar on the action bar and click here and then create your meeting. Oops, if I can spell. And so I'm going to set this meeting at 3:30. I will add David. Okay, and then when I send this, it closes it out, takes me back to my screen. So you can see there it is on the calendar. But when I click on that again, you'll notice that this is where the Join Microsoft Teams meeting shows up. Okay, so this link is what you all received to attend today's meeting. So anyone that has that link can attend, even if they're attending as a guest. Okay, I can just right click on this and copy the link and then paste it into an email, or I could invite someone else. If they're part of my organization, I could just come up here and add additional individuals to the meeting. Okay. Now, there are two other ways to create meetings. One of them is very similar to that. It's going to use Outlook. And so I'm going to select my calendar. And I'm going to create an item on the calendar. And then I'm going to click this button to make it a Teams meeting. So, so that brings that link in and allows me to join the Teams meeting. So oops. Let's call this test. Okay. And then I can have required individuals. David's going to love me because I keep sending this stuff to, and I can have optional individuals. Here we go. Oops. I don't want to add Shanine. She's going to be like, what? I don't have time for a meeting. Okay. All right. So now I can click send and I'll send it anyway. Perhaps. And what we'll notice is that when I go back over to Teams, I should, oh, I didn't put that on my calendar. I had it on support. Darn. Okay. I should be able to see it on the calendar. However, in Outlook, I clicked on the wrong calendar. I clicked on the support calendar instead of clicking on my calendar. And so I can only see my stuff in Teams, the stuff that I created. So, but it would have created something that shows up over here. So either one of those is a great way to create meetings. Okay, so if your IT department has installed the Office 365 apps on your system, then when you're in Outlook, you should also see the option to create a Teams meeting there, and it will show up in both calendars. Now, I do want to go back over to my calendar and show you something else. If I'm looking at my calendar, so I'm going to hide this one for just a moment, you'll notice that the webinar test meeting is here too, because I added it. And so this is showing, it's showing both of those meetings. Okay. So it automatically added it because I created it in Teams. It added it to my Outlook calendar. So I will get a reminder for that. You can see it's already popping up. Okay. So, and it's popping up because I added it to yesterday instead of today. So, so yeah, that is creating meetings. And then
Hey,
there is,
Suzanne,
yeah.
real quick, before you leave this calendar section, if you
Yep.
can create another meeting, I want to point one other thing out for
Sure.
those that may have, the question hasn't come up yet, but usually it does.
Okay.
When you're adding the attendees, you can add, if your organization allows for it, you should be able to add external attendees here. So if where it says add required attendees, you could click there and type in the email address of an outside person, and they will get your meeting invite similar to how you would receive it from Outlook, and it'll have the link to your meeting already embedded in the message.
Okay, so there it's going to my Yahoo account. Okay, so it is possible. Don't email my Yahoo account, please. That will all go into my spam. I don't check that email account very often. All right, so the last thing that I wanted, and I've got 2 minutes left. The last thing that I wanted to show you is over in Teams, another way that you could create a meeting if you're having that back and forth conversation thing going on. There is also an option here to meet now, and I won't start the meeting. If I click meet now, you can see that I can give it a subject like so I can give it a topic, but then if I click meet now, it's just going to start that meeting, and it actually looks like, I took a screenshot of it because I couldn't show you. So it looks like this on your chat. Okay, it'll just pop up, and anybody that's part of that channel can click the join button and be part of that meet now. Okay, the reason that I don't want to do it right now is because if I click meet now and start the meeting, then I go to that meeting and I would put all of you on hold. I don't want to do that. So, but meet now is more of that impromptu. We've chatted back and forth about this 4 or 5 times. It's easier to talk about it. So we want to do that instead. All right, so that's the last option. Okay. All right, so any questions? Any other questions, David, that you've gotten in chat? We've got about 1 minute left.
Muhammad, I wish I knew. So yeah, I don't know how to. Actually, there is a way that you can turn off some notifications for a team or a chat that's taking place or that you were part of. A little bit difficult to show on the screen, but there is that option of turning that or hiding those notifications. Yeah, Karen, I'd also just let somebody else send those out. You create it, send it to, the 10 or 15, whatever you have, and then they can send it out from there. The other option that I know I use this like every day, like it is nonstop. My ears are red by the end of the day because I've got this headset on all day. Is
Hmm.
we use Teams for internal calling. So instead of
Oh yeah.
picking up the cell phone and dialing someone, or even calling on our other main office lines, we keep those free, and we'll use this call feature here. So you
You
have
want to show me your screen?
your list of, oh boy, that's scary.
Oh well, I mean just
Perhaps.
show them voicemail. I don't have any. You have to call me so I have a demo for the next meeting. All right.
So when you're in the calls section, um, again, as you use it, you'll have breakdowns of who you're calling frequently. So Suzanne calls me often, or I call her one way or the other. She's up there as a favorite. I have my other contacts, and then suggested contacts for people that I've had frequent conversations with in the organization. And again, from this view, Suzanne mentioned earlier, you quickly see based on the icon next to someone's picture, green they're available, red they're busy or on a call. The red with the hash is a do not disturb, and then this person is away from their desk or they're not active in Teams at the moment. That is also a setting that you can set, so it sometimes isn't necessarily accurate. But you have the little call option. So you pull up a contacts record, you hit call, and they'll get a Teams call. Which, if you have this set up on multiple devices, I have Teams app on my phone, so I can actually take Teams calls from my mobile device if I'm not at my desk. That's beneficial as well. If the contact you're calling does not answer, you can leave a voice message for that contact, and Teams will track the voicemail here. So if someone leaves a message, you'll see who left it, the duration, the date, and if I click on the item, I get a caption of what message they left, and then I can play it to hear the audio. I don't think I set the option for you to hear my audio when I shared, so I apologize. But if you played that back, it would actually play their little voicemail back. So very helpful, convenient feature within Teams to just quickly grab and communicate with other members. If you need to have a quick conversation where chat's just taking too long or you're tired of banging on the keyboard.
Okay. Well, I'm going to stop the